Before the flood, the Book of Enoch describes a world where heaven and the ground weren't separate the way they are now. Closer to what I'd call a fourth dimension, sitting right up against the physical one. And the text names the exact place where the gate into that space got sealed shut. Chapter 10, verse 4. Raphael gets an order, and it's oddly specific for one angel disposing of another. Dig an opening in a desert called Dudael. Put Azazel in it, cover him with jagged rocks, keep him in the dark permanently. I've read that verse more times than I can count, and it still reads like a set of construction instructions, not a sentence handed down in a courtroom. Hermon is where the story starts, and even the name is doing work. The Hebrew root behind Hermon means devoted to destruction, or bound by an oath, depending on who's translating it. 200 angels stood on that mountain and swore themselves into what came next, and the mountain kept the name afterward. If you only know the flood as weather, you're missing the part where something gets buried on purpose in a named valley under a specific kind of rock, sealed by an angel following instructions precise enough to sound almost bureaucratic. That's the part I want to sit inside today, because a story doesn't usually bother with this much detail, unless the detail is doing something. I've spent 3 years going line by line through the Ge'ez text, and Dudael is one of maybe 4 places in the whole book where I still don't have a clean answer. Before I go further, many of you guys were asking us where to get the uncensored version of the Ethiopian Bible. Don't worry guys, it's on our website, and also if you want the personal readings, it's on the website too. The link is in the description, or scan this QR code. So back to Hermon, the 200 didn't sneak down one at a time. They came as a body, bound themselves by a mutual oath before they ever touched the ground, and split the curriculum between them once they landed. Azazel took weapons and metalwork. Semjaza taught root cutting and enchantment. Barakiel taught the reading of stars. Kokabeel taught the constellations themselves. Penemu taught writing, ink and paper, the mechanism for holding a thought outside a human skull for the first time. Weapons, enchantment, writing. 3 different categories of knowledge handed down by 3 different teachers. And every one of them changes what a human being can reach without waiting for permission. That's not an accident of the story. That's the story. I want to slow down on Penemu specifically because his part gets skipped over more than the others. Teaching someone to make a sword is dangerous in an obvious way. Teaching someone to write things down is dangerous in a quieter one, because now a thought can survive the person who had it, get copied, get passed to someone who never met the source. Metawork changes what a hand can do. Writing changes what a generation can inherit. The text puts them in the same list, taught by the same class of being, on the same mountain. The text is not ambiguous about what this did to the ground. It says the earth filled with the giants born from that mixing, and with the blood and disorder that came with them. The cry of it reached upward, and 4 archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, went to report what they'd seen. Enoch gets pulled into the middle of it. The watchers, cut off and terrified, ask him to write their petition for forgiveness and carry it upward, because they can no longer lift their own eyes to do it themselves. He writes it, he reads it near the waters of Dan, south and west of Hermon, and falls asleep there, and what he sees in that sleep is the verdict. When he wakes up, he has to deliver it in person, and the text tells you exactly where that delivery happens. And when I awaked, I came unto them, and they were all sitting gathered together, weeping in Azazel, which is between Lebanon and Senezar, with their faces covered. Azazel, between Lebanon and Senezar, an older name for the Hermon range. That's not a vague direction. That's 2 named mountains and a valley pinned between them, which puts it inside what's now the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. It's fertile ground, the kind people have farmed there for a very long time. And there's nothing dramatic about that fact on its own. I mention it because it means this isn't some inaccessible wasteland nobody ever set foot in. People have lived on top of this location the entire time. Why would a text about angels bother telling you the exact valley between two named mountains? That's what happened at Hermon. What happened at Dudael is where the location gets specific in a different direction. The rest of the Watchers get bound in the valleys of the earth and left there for 70 generations, waiting. General confinement spread out, unremarkable as far as the text is concerned. Azazel doesn't get that. He gets a named desert, a dug opening, jagged rocks stacked on top, and his face covered so he doesn't see light again. Why did one angel out of 200 need a different kind of containment entirely? I don't have a tidy answer sitting ready for that, and I'd rather admit that than reach for one. What I can tell you is what the text does instead of explaining it. It gets specific. A named desert, a dug opening, rocks stacked deliberately, not left where they fell, not a punishment cell, a seal. Here's where I have to be honest about what's mine and what's the text's. The book calls Dudael an opening. In some renderings it comes across closer to a pit. The word carries both, and translators split on which direction to lean. I don't think that ambiguity is nothing. An opening and a pit are not the same object, and the text doesn't pick one for you. The rocks are real, and so is the site most people land on when they trace that valley forward into the present. Baalbek. Long before Rome built a temple to Jupiter over it, before the Phoenicians ever dedicated the ground to Baal, it was already a tell, a mound built up slowly, from layer after layer of people living on the same spot, without knowing what came before them. The way most ancient settlements get built without anyone planning it that way. What's under those later buildings is the part that stops most people cold. The retaining wall at the base of the platform holds 3 stones known as the trilithon, each one weighing somewhere between 800 and 1,000 tons, cut and set together so tightly that nothing fits between them, not even a blade. A short distance away, still sitting in the quarry where it was cut, there's an unfinished stone that would have weighed close to 1,200 tons if anyone had ever managed to move it, and as far as anyone knows, nobody ever did. People still picnic along the outer wall of that site today, which is a strange thing to picture once you've heard what it might be sitting on top of. Anyway, the rocks are real. What they're covering is where I stop reporting and start reading. Nobody has a working explanation for how Bronze Age tools moved stones that size. And I'm not going to pretend I do either. What I will say, and this is mine, not the text's, is that if you needed something permanent enough to keep an opening shut forever, in a way that would still be shut 1,000 years later, and then 2,000, and then whatever we're at now, you would want something close to exactly this. Mass nobody could move by accident. Weight that outlasts whatever civilization happens to be living on top of it at the time. Nobody has published this connection between Dudael and Baalbek as settled fact. And I want to be clear that I haven't found it settled anywhere. Not in a footnote, not in a commentary, nowhere. I'm looking at a named valley, a described seal, and a pile of stone nobody can fully explain, and I'm choosing to think they're the same place. That's my read. The text does not say it in those words. If you grew up with a flood story that had none of this in it, no bound angels, no sealed opening, just a boat and 40 days of rain, I'd genuinely like to know where you first heard it, and what got left out. Enoch doesn't stop at the ground level. Chapters 72 through 82, sometimes called the Astronomical Book, have Enoch touring the sky itself with an angel named Uriel as his guide. And one of the first things Uriel shows him is described as the storehouses of the winds, a phrase I still think about, a place where wind gets kept until it's released. And this next part is straight teaching, no reading of mine attached to it. Uriel shows him 12 gates set at the far edges of the earth, and the sun and moon pass through different ones depending on the season, moving in a fixed order. The text lays out gate by gate, month by month, without a single one out of sequence. Wind comes through gates too, and not all of it does the same job. Some gates release wind that brings rain and healthy growth. Others, when they open, bring frost and damage and destruction on the ground below. The text treats this the way you'd treat a set of valves, each one doing exactly one thing, opened and closed on a rhythm nobody down here controls. This surprised me the first time I actually mapped it out, section by section, instead of skimming past it the way most readers do to get back to the angel story. 12 gates in the sky, each one doing a different job. Opening and closing on a schedule Enoch is shown but doesn't invent. That's the sky map the book gives you. Now look at what's missing from the ground map. If you've read this section before and skipped straight past it to get back to the Watchers, you're not the only one. I did the same thing the first 2 times through. If the sky runs on gates, on and off switches, built into the structure of things, then a single gate on the ground sealed shut on purpose in a specific desert stops looking like a strange one-off detail. It starts looking like it belongs to the same system. That's mine. The text never draws that line for you. I'm drawing it because once you've read the astronomical section, Dudael reads differently to me. And I wanted to tell you that plainly instead of letting you assume it was in the text all along. I don't have a read on the parts of this that go further, into a whole ladder of dimensions past the 4th, humanity climbing back up towards some final unity state. That's a much bigger claim than anything I can trace back to a chapter and verse, and I'm not going to invent the rest of the ladder just because the first rung holds. There's a cost to what happened to the giants once the flood came, and Enoch is specific about that too. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle and work destruction on the earth. They take no food but nevertheless hunger and thirst and cause offences. Half angel, half human, and when the flood took the human half away, the spirit didn't have anywhere to go. Not up because the origin was partly earthly, not down into simple death because the origin was partly angelic. What's left is something permanently hungry in a body it no longer has. If your church or your family had a name for that kind of thing growing up, I'd like to hear what it was. Every household I've talked to about this seems to have its own word for it, and almost none of them trace it back to this chapter. If a gate got sealed on the ground and the sky kept running on its own schedule of gates, what happened to everything that used to move freely through the space in between? I sat with that question longer than I expected to, and I don't think the text gives you a tidy resolution to it either. It just keeps describing the aftermath and lets you draw the shape yourself. My own shape for it is displaced things, still hungry, still present with nowhere built for them anymore. I want to flag that plainly as mine, because the text gives you the hunger and the restlessness. It doesn't use the word displaced. I do. People didn't forget what had been open before the flood, even after it closed. Genesis 11 gives you a tower and a stated ambition that the top of it would reach heaven. And the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Nothing will be restrained from them," reads like alarm, not annoyance at a tall building, alarm at what a unified, coordinated effort could still reach, even after the ground had supposedly been sealed off from the sky. The response wasn't to knock the tower down and leave it at that. It was to split the language so the coordination itself couldn't happen again the same way. A tower is a physical object, easy enough to topple with the right amount of force. A shared language is the thing that let people build it in the first place. And that's what actually gets taken away. I don't think Babel was really about the building. I think the building was just the visible part of something the text was more worried about, which was people acting as one mind again. The same kind of unified intent that put 200 angels on a mountain in the first place. That's my reading of Babel sitting next to Dudael, not the plain text of either passage on its own. Genesis doesn't mention a gate. Enoch doesn't mention a tower. I'm the one putting them on the same table. If you've heard a different reason given for why Babel mattered, the ambition angle rather than the language angle, tell me which one you were taught. I want to know how widespread the version I grew up with actually is. I want to slow down for a second and tell you what I don't have. The text never gives Dudael coordinates. It doesn't say how far from Hermon, doesn't give you a direction to walk, doesn't name a river or a road. Every identification of the site with an actual valley on a map, mine included, is downstream of Azazel's location, not Dudael's own description. That's a real gap, and I'm not going to pretend the geography closes it for me just because the surrounding valley matches. If this is the kind of reading you want more of, subscribing does that automatically. It puts the next one in front of you the moment it's ready. I started this channel because I got tired of watching the strangest parts of this book get smoothed over in seminary, and every subscriber tells me that slower, unsmoothed version is still worth making. You can open chapter 10 tonight and read the order to Raphael yourself, in whatever translation you trust. It's a short passage, a few lines, and it won't cost you more than a few minutes. You'll notice the specificity now. The desert, the opening, the rocks, the covered face, in a way you might have skimmed past before. And when you get to chapter 72 and the 12 gates in the sky, you'll have a ground level gate to measure it against, whether or not you land where I did with Baalbek. That's the shift I want you walking away with, not a verdict on where Dudael actually sits, because I don't have one to hand you. A different way of reading the specificity itself, the habit this book has of naming a valley, a mountain, a stone, instead of staying vague the way you'd expect a folktale to stay vague. I don't know if Dudael and Baalbek are the same ground. I've told you exactly where the text stops and where I start. What I keep coming back to is that somebody, angel or mason, thought a single opening was dangerous enough to bury under more stone than anyone could move by accident, and the book never tells you they were wrong to think that. Thank you guys for watching, and peace out.